Up? We are back again with another episode. Jordan, what's going on, man?
Um, Doing incredibly okay, as usual. Not really, but doing my best.
Right on, dude. Well, we're back, and it's awesome getting to sit here and do another one with you, dude. And we were
Yeah,
just talking about before we even jumped on here. It's just something that we really enjoy getting to do something like that, regardless of how
massive.
many people follow or whatever. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
Because for us, it's about diving into the topic. If people get something from it, great. But we're not gonna sit there and try to make people follow us or get too caught up in all that stuff. The,
yeah,
the goal is if you listen and you like it, what we're trying to do is just talk about important topics that we feel about that hopefully may spark something in you. And I
yeah.
think that should remain the goal, regardless of
Always,
how many people we follow.
always.
Right?
Absolutely.
So today we are going to talk about uncertainty
Hmm.
and what that means. It sounds so broad when you just throw out a word like uncertainty.
Yeah,
But when you think of uncertainty, it's variety. It's what makes adventure. It's what creates room to look at what we believe and why we believe it. And it's something that I feel like is not valued to the level that I feel like it should be in the
mm,
world that we're in. Maybe it is other places of the world, but like our little bubble in Portland and the people we're around, it doesn't seem like that.
yeah.
Especially coming out of the church environment where I would say that the church environment is a quest for certainty. Certainty
100%.
labeled as faith, where I don't think that's healthy in a way because I think faith is active and dynamic and has little bits and pieces of doubt in there where you're looking at it questioning why things are compared to this straight nope, this is real, mind turned off. So that's where we want to begin, is just talking about this uncertainty piece. How do you feel um, uncertainty is around the world, the little bubble we're in? How do you see it right now?
Well, I obviously I can only speak for myself, and I've made it abundantly clear that the only thing I know is I don't know. Um, so I mean, it's another synonym for knowing that I don't know is I'm certain that I'm uncertain
Mm.
about the future unknowns. In terms of the world and how we are interacting with the uncertainties that will forever remain uncertain, and that's something I'm certain of. um, it's I think it creates an infinite amount of chaos, moment by moment for people, whether
Mm.
they're conscious of it or not.
Yeah.
I think we're constantly stirring with whether or not the future will be the thing that I'm striving to create it to be,
Mm.
and manifesting future unknowns. Um, it, it's really in a sick, fucked up soul way painful, because it's the premise of faith. And what's so delusional about the organized religion's perception of faith, trying to deliver something that's uh, uh, irrefutably structured. Like, you cannot even debate whether or not this thing is fact. So essentially, they're saying we are providing a thing that is going to give you certainty
Mm.
about a dimension of life beyond this life. And it's the reason why I say it's painful is because once I mean, and Nietzsche talks about, like, God is dead, but he discusses it in a way not saying it's metaphorically. He's
Mm-hmm.
saying the Western organized religion has killed God because they have facilitated a faith is something that is fact, and the premise of faith is believing in something you can't see.
Yeah.
It's the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
But there's enough evidence here that I'm going to hold on, that this path has enough truth in it for me to continue seeking out the uncertainty with hope. So I
Gotcha.
think I think healthy uncertainty is necessary, but it has to be tied to hope. But then you have to
Mm.
ask yourself, step even further back, what is your hope tied to?
Mm.
And are you certain that you should be certain about that uncertainty? So it's this multi-directional, chaotic thing that I think most people don't even interact with,
Mm.
because all they're thinking about is, I I want things to be very specifically perfect in the future, and I am going to do everything today with a future tense of myself that I don't know is going to be that thing, and I'm going to continue to try this insane, psychotic, like rat in a maze, hamster on the wheel, like Groundhog's Day. I'm going to do the same thing again and again and again and expect different results. So we're wanting this false sense of security
Mm.
with a future that it may or may not happen. And I think a lot of our anxiety with uncertainty stems from the inevitable death that we're all going to have. And I think we're trying to create moments between now and between when we die that have a certain state of comforts and false senses of security, and we avoid pain. So we're certain that we're building today's habits out of I'm wanting there to be some level of certainty that life's not going to be too bad tomorrow or the days after that, and I'm going to try to control everything. I'm going to try to build a career path that gives me a false sense of security and certainty that my family's going to be okay, and my kid's not going to get cancer, or my husband or wife is not going to leave me, or I'm not going to lose my job. So there's this control. It all stems from control issues. I think certainty stems from we want to be certain about things, but like you and I were just saying prior to starting, is what's so fucked up is we want to be certain, but we also equally, if not more, want to be uncertain. Because if we knew how tomorrow was going to pan out, are we certain that we'd want to wake up and live that day? There's that level of apathy that comes with knowing how. That's why you get lazy at your job. You know how it's going to be. You're certain how the pattern at work is going to be, and you get apathetic. The way we are stimulated as humans is to press into the uncertainty with excitement and to see what's in the world of the unknown.
Sure.
So it's crazy, man. Even saying these things out loud makes me realize how bananas the whole thing is.
Well, we could talk about something too that, like, with uncertainty is that level of uncomfortability, right?
Yeah.
And with that, it allows us to grow.
Yeah.
It's only in those uncomfortable moments that you really grow, right? Like the thing we've been talking about a lot is the Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
And like the biggest thing about that is like you're doing these breathing exercises that are uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of forced, and you feel lightheaded and blah blah blah, and then you go into a cold shower, which is to me the epitome of being uncomfortable. I like the warm showers,
Yeah,
man.
physiologically,
yeah,
yeah.
you get in, it's nice, you just relax a little bit.
Yep.
But with the cold shower, you learn how much it helps you, how much it actually pushes you. And I think today is something where we aren't really valuing these things that help create a strong person, that help push you and make you grow, because we're so drowning in comfort constantly in this immediacy. We're like, I feel like that's where uncertainty is the most powerful, in the sense of like it will push us. It will push us in these uncomfortable areas where we have to grow, where we have to re-examine and look.
Yeah. So specifically with looking at certainty and uncertainty, you're basically separating. There's comfort and discomfort. Certainty brings comfort because we feel like there's an expectation of knowing what it's going to be. Therefore, I don't have to be in a heightened sense of physiological awareness about how things. I don't have to be in a defense mode. But being in that cold shower, it's like your anatomy evokes this, like, don't fucking do it. Are you kidding me? Like, get in that warm, ooey gooey, like doughy state of like a cinnamon roll physiologically around you and the icing pouring over you, you know? Instead, it's like, hey, go jump in a pool of shards of glass. And that's essentially what your body's telling you. Like, what are you doing? But consciously, you're a grown-ass man, and you see the studies and the evidence of this is actually incredibly healthy for your body. So you press into the uncertainty of whether or not it's going to be comfortable, and you're certain it's going to be uncomfortable, but you're separating, saying, pressing into the uncertainty, it's going to be a not physiologically pleasant thing. There's so much growth there. And developing that stamina and that kind of callousness is essential to growing and pressing into the uncertainty and accepting it. So to reverse the question that you initiated with, in our world today, where do you see the spectrum of certainty and uncertainty either crippling us or empowering us? And how do you see it manifesting differently for those two people groups, living in uncertainty and accepting it, or pressing and being addicted to finding certainty and trying to control that?
Well, I think that one of the biggest areas is our faith, our religious practice, where it's something where we want the ultimate comfort. It's like what you said, the morbid idea of we're all going to die one day is the luring thing that we want our spiritual life insurance, man.
100%.
And to the point where, like, I remember being in seminary and sitting there and really, like, the journey was, how can I be more certain of this thing that I believe is true?
Yeah.
right? And the journey was like, study it, you know, like almost like when you had those moments of uncertainty, it was weak faith.
Yep.
You know, you'd look at it and be like, oh man, I gotta read more, pray more, or whatever it is. And I feel like that is something where it's just so toxic,
Yep.
because I feel like there's part of it of like, you know, it's like the great scientific question began with the three words, I don't know.
Yeah.
And let's look at it.
Yeah.
Like, why does it seem like that the sun comes up every day, and why does it seem like the stars are moving the way that they are? Like, we're
Yeah.
trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And to the point where people be like, listen, man, you don't ask these kinds of questions because we already have the answers, and that's what we care about, right?
Yeah.
We don't need to pursue this thing. But then it's like, no, you do need to pursue these things, because to figure things out, to understand the reality of the situation, which is such a big part of life and growing and everything else, is you have to try to seek that reality.
Yeah.
You have to try and I talked about it when I was talking about God, is like I look at it as a lot like Hegel talks about with God. It's like God is like trying to see the fullest reality in which we find ourselves in a lot of ways, where that uncertainty pushes you to that place, because otherwise, you know, you're spoon-fed so many different things that you need that uncertain time to like go back and look at. That's why college can be so important, where you go and like you're testing things constantly, right? You're testing yourself, you're testing your sexuality, you're testing what you know or don't know, and what you want to be and who you are. But it's only entering into that, and then it seems like we kind of answer the questions and stop.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily a healthy thing. I think that there's a relationship that needs to be had with uncertainty, and the fact that we may not know it, but we treasure it in some ways. You know, when we go do those events like zip lining in Mexico, or, you know, those things where you just don't know if everything's going to be okay in the end, but you go and you don't know what to expect, and then you're just like, damn, that was awesome.
Yeah. That
you know?
adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's where it's at, man. It's like I look at it today and I see like we just need to be okay with that I don't know question. I don't know. And I feel like that's the most freeing thing, is when you can actually like look and just say, man, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Well, that's not to go off on the Nietzsche tangent again, but there's something so powerful when you really think about the fact that someone who's so thoroughly gangster in their thoughts and their mind, and went to places mentally that ultimately I think drove him crazy, but he had the courage to explore the uncertainties that we're trying to hold on to, and in observing that, the observation of Christianity in the Western world, the reason why it was killed is it became a business, and the commodity of God was being presented in a way that if you followed a certain recipe, then you can be certain that you will walk through the metaphorical pearly gates and have an eternity of bliss, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And it is the worst thing you can do to the mind, and is give them a foolproof structure of irrefutable evidence that they're in the club. They won. After this life, you won.
Yeah.
So what that does in this life is it facilitates infinite cancerous apathy to be provoked in the search and the development of that neurological soul muscularity that needs to be developed by pressing into the unknown. As soon as you start to feel a false sense of security of I'm certain about the unknown, why do you have to do anything ever again? I mean, there's no incentive.
Yeah.
Like, we're pathetic. We have to be incentivized in order to develop and grow. As soon as you become certain in a thing, you get soft. You get super soft, and it's inevitable. So you and I both growing up and spending too many hours in environments where there were people that were certain about the afterlife. You and I both saw what Nietzsche was talking about with the irreversible level of facades that people put on, because people were wanting to show through their painful lying demeanor that, isn't it great that we're all going to heaven? Isn't it great that we all know God? And I was having coffee, and God was having a heart-to-heart with me, you know, metaphysically. And I had to go to church, and God was like making me late because he was like, oh, I just love having coffee with you in your mind and having this like pretend conversation. Like, people get so drunk off of the idea, and they become so delusional with this false sense of security through religion that it it destroys their capacity to even think. Like you're not even open to a new idea because your whole basis of what you do every day is saying, I know that I know that I know, and I'm so safe in this warm bubble and no one can pop it because I'm around people and Bible studies, and basically environmentally I am in a place that is full proof of certainty, or the synthetic version of it. So I think it's fucking terrifying to be in a place of knowing you don't know. But until you know that you don't know, and until you're certain that you're uncertain, you'll never be free. And my experience-based evidence of that, and basically the premise of why I was even able to be here in this season of life and do this with you, is when I did get diagnosed with cancer and I got told all these statistics of what it meant and like of the types of cancer, and I have zero victim mentality about it. Like, I'm so past the fear of it. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, if that's the thing that ultimately erases my existence in this dimension, so be it. Like, I don't give a fuck anymore. But when it happened, I thoroughly was terrified.
Yeah, sure.
And when you're at that age and you're a young man who's going to have a daughter and has all these hypotheses of what the future's going, all these certainties that I was building, all these structures I was building towards the certain life I wanted to have. When you told you're going to die and it's going to be soon, hypothetically, everything stops. All the things that you thought were real and in your control are gone. Sure. And what's so beautiful about that is, I say this with such humility, and I say this not in a way to glamorize like the position of having walked through it, but it's like I can literally say that cancer saved my life because it rid the cancer of my need to have certainty in it.
Sure.
That expiration date of life, that is inevitable. For me, that was the gate key to unlocking like a realm of uncertainty and seeing it as a beautiful thing. And the reality that what I thought I knew about spirituality and religion was not doing shit for me in that moment.
Sure.
I was fucking terrified, and I realized how uncertain I was. So for me, it's that's my little sales pitch about the infinite beauty that you can find when you press into letting go of certainty and realizing like that's the thing that's fucking killing you, is thinking that you have enough evidence to be certain about something. Because you can't grow. You can't press into the unknown. The unknown is the beauty that ultimately incentivizes you to grow. So letting go of that, it's like that is the antidote to cancer. Like that is the chemotherapy to the need we have to be certain. Is I now know that I'm certain that I always want to be uncertain. Because I'm in a perpetual state of growth when I'm accepting that I know I don't know. You know, it's so beautiful.
Totally. So when you're talking, it makes me think that I look at it almost in like Lord of the Rings kind of way, where like maybe we have this ring that we have to carry. We can't let go because people are after it or whatever, but we have to go to Mordor to get rid of the ring. To me, that's kind of like what uncertainty is. So like when I'm listening to you talk and you're talking about cancer and how that hits you and what it made you do, like to me it's like it forced you to go through Mordor, man. You had this thing, this ring that you didn't realize was this toxic thing weakening you all the time.
Every day.
And it exposed it, right? Where basically you had to go through it, and then you threw that sucker in the freaking Mount Doom.
Yeah.
And we're free.
Yeah.
Right? Where I feel like that's why we got to look at it sometimes, because sometimes I think that we are so convinced that we're such a good judge of what's true or not true or whatever, what's good for us or what's helpful and harmful or all these different things. And we put so much faith in our ability to say, this is good, that's bad. This is helpful, that's harmful. And I think going back to this process of being uncertain makes you realize that how do I know I'm that good of a judge here, man? Like, what are my standards I'm using to make this judgment, right? Yep. And I think that's the process of going through of uncertainty in the place like we're talking about. It's like asking the questions and not being afraid to like say, I don't know, man. I don't know. And I feel like there's a freeing part with it, and it can be terrifying, like what you're talking about. Like when shit hit the fan for me when I was in seminary, right? I mean, I'm 2 years in, and all of a sudden it's like, man, I don't really know if this is real anymore, and everything starts falling apart. Then you realize, okay, what was making me come here in the first place?
Yeah.
You know, and like,
Your need for certainty.
yeah, and that's basically what it was. It was like looking at like, you know, back to like Pascal's wager of like saying like, oh, it's better to believe in this and then still be a good person if it's not true, right? And realizing that, no, maybe it's not that simple, man. Maybe I'm believing in something for a really poor reason, like scared of dying and scared of where I'm going to go, or, you know, whatever it is. And it was like my faith house is built on this shitty foundation.
Yeah.
And what happened when the uncertainty wave hit me in the classroom, when I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, I got a question in my mind that I can't get rid of if I'm going to be honest with myself.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it just goes down and you're just like, oh man, the foundation isn't as solid as I thought. And then things start to fall apart. And then you're just like, it's a scary process, especially when your life's built on it, dude. You know, like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that. Like that's where I was, you know, that's why I got a master's in theology.
Yeah.
You know, where now I look at it, I'm so thankful that uncertainty snuck up like a snake and bit me in the classroom.
Yeah.
Because it would have been like, I would have been a teacher or gone down that path based on believing something for a horrible reason.
Yeah.
And I feel like that needs to haunt us a lot more than it does.
Absolutely.
Because we are so okay with ourselves as judge, when in reality, you got to ask yourself that hard question of, how do I know? And that's a doorway that a lot of people are just like, nope, I'm taking the blue pill, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
I ain't taking the red pill today. No, that sucker looks freaky, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, and this might be a hard question to wrestle with, like in real time, but you might already know the answer. But if, in retrospect, looking back, do you think a big driver of your path to get a master's in certainty in a specific path of religion and spiritual thought, do you think a significant part of that driving force was subconsciously wanting to find certainty and then recreate it in a class format to then give the thing that you're starving to find?
Yeah.
Do you think that was a big fueler of it for you in retrospect?
Oh, dude, totally. You know, it went back to my definition of faith. Faith was certainty, but when faith is certainty, it's also delusion, and you're in this delusional state, but you're also thinking like, man, Jesus is awesome, dude. I'm all for, like, I'm ride or die Jesus here, right?
Absolutely.
Where you look at it and you're like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I think there can be when you believe in something for the wrong reasons.
100%.
And whatever anchors you to Jesus being your God and your truth, if it's some jacked up fear or something that something that you're built on that just is not real or true, right? Like if you don't realize that you're kind of been duped in your mind, and what you're doing, like, was what I was trying to do, is basically like teach this certainty. I taught apologetics, man. Yeah. I sat there and was like going through all the questions of like why you should believe, because that's what it was. It was like, listen, man, you can bank on this. You can bank on it. Yeah. And calming that down in you. So when you have those moments where someone says something, you're like, oh my, like, if that's true, that's scary, right? And then you just go back into your little shell and realize that Jesus is God and everything's going to be okay. You know, it doesn't do you any good. And to me, what I realized is I was someone trying to just pound that certainty bell constantly to everyone I came around. And I'm thankful that it didn't happen, because I just would have been, I guess, just a lot like other people I saw in there. And not to judge them. They're all on their own path. And, you know, I just know for me that, like, it wouldn't have been a good thing for me. Like, I think I would have been morally a good person, but I think that's part of what's wrong with so much of us, because, like, we get into these situations where we're trying so hard to be faithful and believe and do the right things that, like, there's this repressed side of you that you're 100%. Not dealing with. And I think that's a big part of, like, what the Catholic Church has been dealing with, that, like, people don't know who they are or where they're at, and they're repressing this stuff, and then it comes out.
Yeah.
So the big thing is like the gospel message here is it's okay to not know. It's okay to just have faith that like maybe Jesus is God, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You know? Because the thing is, it's like, how in the hell are you supposed to know that happened 2,000 years ago? You got one book. Like, it's not as clear cut as I feel like it's presented.
We weren't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I really appreciate your honesty about that. You know, I think Jesus is the perfect example for both you and I to be a kind of a gauge of where our certainty or uncertainty is in terms of how thoroughly we drank the fire hose of what Jesus was in a very specific way. And Jesus and I have a very tumultuous and interesting past and current relationship, quote unquote. I look at Jesus, and I have more than I mean, it makes me emotional right now, like talking about him, because there's so much beauty in what I have read about what he did. I wasn't there. I don't fucking know whether or not all these things happened, and I've read and observed and absorbed and thought about this dude more than any other dude and or person. And the life he lived was so radically radical that to this day you have not had a life lived that has shaped the world with what he did and the lessons he taught through the life that he lived, verbally and non-verbally. I mean, he essentially believed what he did to death. And the level of humility he had, and even up until the last moment he was here, or how it was documented him, you know, there's two dudes, which I take the whole symbolism of how he was crucified and the two dudes on both sides of him, they were being crucified. I take it as almost like this beautiful, horrifically sad, metaphorical imagery of Jesus being in the center, being in a place of complete acceptance that, you know, there is a divine source of power that created him, and he came here to be a conduit of infinite love. And that's what he did to death. And it was so radical and it was so extreme that the political people of the day had to kill him because he was causing too much chaos with how opposing his views on what power is and the equality he believed every man should have and woman and man should have inside of his life. He believed that and taught that. And the powers that be at the day were so driven by the hierarchy of earning and being something specific, and there's no fucking way you deserve to be in power or deserve to go to heaven unless you're doing or being specific things. And Jesus's whole heart said, everyone is equal in my Father's, metaphorically, my Father's eyes, God. And the two dudes on both sides of him at the end, one was mocking him and was saying, if you're God, then fucking, you know, do some Star Trek, Star Wars shit and beam yourself out of here. Yeah. And the other guy saw the level of humility and peace and accept and just power of love that this guy lived. And all he said was, hey, whenever you go to heaven or whatever dimension you're in, you know, please remember me. And Jesus's instant rebuttal is like, when I'm there, when you die and I die in this dimension of reality, we're going to be conscious again in a place called heaven, whatever the fuck that means. But the guy that was saying to Jesus, like, please remember me, open-endedly. And that guy wasn't some philosopher. Like, he was being crucified for probably incredibly good reasons. I mean, I'm not advocating for crucifixion, but I'm saying he probably lived a really shitty fucking life and did some really fucked up shit. But he had the humility to say, like, there's still a part of me that wants to feel love and feel acceptance, and I want to be in a place of love and acceptance after this life. And he was open to it. And just because of that state of energy, Jesus is saying, well, then welcome, you know? Yeah. So my point being is, I have, specifically about Jesus, I have absolutely no idea the validity of so many aspects of what that religion, Christianity, stands for, but the specific life of Jesus and what he did and the infinite love that he taught about and acceptance was so powerful. But I I learn from him and I study his life from a place of accepting that I will forever be uncertain about the details of whether or not this guy was who he says he was, or there was this virgin. It doesn't the whole thing doesn't make sense.
I gotcha.
But that doesn't cripple me. I don't need to have certainty. My whole point is I don't need to have certainty about something in order to grow from it. That's my whole point.
Yeah.
And the freedom I have to actually learn so much from him as a teacher, or a Buddhist teacher, or some Taoist. I mean, I can take knowledge and truth from so many sources because I'm not locked into certainty of I'm on the team that's winning. Go Patriots. You know, I'm Tom Brady, I'm cheating, but I'm still winning. You know, it's like that's what you feel like. I feel like that Christianity in our Western culture is that Tom Brady-esque thing. It's like, we're going to win and we're going to buy off and we're going to do whatever we got to do to win. And that's what I see. And like that certainty within Western culture's spirituality is we're buying certainty of a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's what I see. When they're going to win today, and they fucking will because they're the Patriots, they bought it. But there's no, the certainty they have is holding on to an unethical path of success. And the freedom, if the Rams lose when they do, they can be certain that they can still win. Even if they lose, if they did their best, like there's victory in that state. So anyways, not to get off on a Jesus Super Bowl tangent, but I think I have learned so much, and I learned so much more about Jesus after I let go of the need to have it define my certainty and I'm going to heaven. I don't know where the fuck I'm going. I haven't died yet, and no one fucking does. But that level of peace I have is infinite because I can now grow. I don't have to just put on blinders to the infinite truth that's available out there and decipher for myself subjectively what truth is.
Yeah, judge it. But
Yeah.
I think the important part too to realize where you're at and where you've come from is when, and I can speak from my perspective and I'll bring it back, but when I didn't believe in Jesus as God anymore and went through that phase, I could understand what somebody like a Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins was doing.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to bring that out because like,
that's a good point.
when you look at like this faith and you see there's been a lot of harm that's come from it. I mean, that's just part of seeing it for what it is. There's been tremendous things that have happened that have great. People have been helped and healed or whatever, right? Because of the Christian faith. But I think it's important to realize that looking at where you're at now and just seeing the full circle, right? Of not just going, okay, this isn't true, stopping and being like, I need to let everybody else know this shit ain't true. It's a bunch of garbage. It's a bunch of fairy tale stuff that's just robbing us of people, right? Yeah. And I think that's really important because that's when you're like resenting it almost. You know what I mean? You're like holding on to it in a sense of like, I know it's not true. It's the opposite of what you were doing. Yeah. And you're just going to beat it into other people's heads. Yeah. So I think that the cool part of just getting to talk about it, where you could talk about Jesus the way you just did, is somebody who has come full circle that's like, no, man, like, I'm open here. You know, I'm not, I don't have anything against that. You know, I'm not going to try to beat it in other people's heads. Sure, I see how it could be harmful. That's what we're talking about right now, right?
Absolutely.
We're talking about the sense that certainty creeps into faith and tends to sabotage it. And that going through the process is learning to see truth in whatever form, even if it was the thing that you believed in that now you don't necessarily see as all true or whatever. Because it's a key point. Because I think the way that our world is, and you know, especially the the civilized part where people are going to university, it's like if you believe in God or anything like that, it's like, you know, like scoff at you. Like, how in the world could you ever do that? Yeah. You know, but there's a part of like you're turning yourself off to so much. Yeah. You know,
and their certainty, quote unquote, that there is no God, they're just as crippled as the ones who are in a religion that believe that religion is certainly true. Exactly. It's just two extremes, but causing same amount of crippling energy in your life. Yeah. And I think that's what I was referencing, like the symbolism of Jesus being in the center on the cross is like there's two spectrums of life's lived. There's the Sam Harris on one side of the cross that's like, this guy's a fucking joke. Like, if you're real, then like go ask your daddy to beam you up. And there's the same amount of fear and crippling anxiety in that knowing that you think you know that Jesus isn't real. Yeah. As it is to believe in Jesus to the extent that you think it's so certain that it's irrefutable. Like
Yeah.
we don't have the capacity to understand metaphysically what infinite truth is. We don't know, and we'll never know. But the uncertainty is where freedom is, and I think that's where Jesus found himself in the center of two lives lived, two extremes, and that's where there was that place of divinity and that peace that came with recognizing like there is a source of energy that created me, and I'm gonna return to that. And in the same way, we're all just made up of atoms, and there is no disconnection from anything here physically.
Yeah.
You, me, like we're all just composed skin suits of energy connected to everything. In whatever dimension our souls transfer to out of this skin suit, so fucking be it.
Yeah.
But on this side of that, we owe it to ourselves and everyone to promote openness, to promote uncertainty. Because in that place, I'm certain that will forever continue to grow, because your life lived has provoked and created perceptions of what is true and what isn't in ways that I'll never understand. But in allowing you to convey those, could be differing perceptions of what is, I can grow and I can encourage you to grow. But as soon as we place certainty in our mind, we put up a fucking wall and we say, hey, other culture, you're not allowed into our country of certainty.
That's right.
It's like, who the fuck, like, especially being in America, like, we don't own this place. Like, we are all generations from other cultures. Like, none of us are here originally.
Yeah.
Like, we fucking stole this place, and somehow we think we deserve to protect it. So, metaphorically, like, us telling other people to not come in and have the same chance that we fortunately were born into, to have this freedom, to even sit here and talk right now. Like, there's thousands of people that have died this last year for attempting to talk about topics of spirituality because they're not allowed to.
Yeah.
You know, so that just getting to be here and explore uncertainty is one of the greatest gifts our conscious realities have. It's, you know, it's such a gift.
Well, and that's the thing, dude, because it's something we were talking about before. We're like, with uncertainty, it's uncomfortable, it's scary, it's something where it's the harder things in life that you have to step in. Where, like, I think of being as a parent, and like I look at my kids, man, and I'm constantly caught between so many different feelings. But like the uncertainty of not knowing what is going to happen. Like I have one of my friends whose daughter's up at Dornbecker's right now getting chemo treatments, right?
No way.
Who just had a bone marrow transplant. That, like, I have no idea that's going to happen, right? There's a part where, like, entering into the uncertainty of life that way, it's easier just to be like, nope, everything's going to be okay. He's healthy. He's going to be okay. But there's a part that, like, we need to accept that we don't know. We don't know what the next day is going to bring. And the difference is when you can do that, like, dude, it just, like, all of a sudden creates this space, right? Where this space of, like, I don't know. And it's like you can almost separate, to the sense that you're looking at your life in this way of, like, I don't know what the next moment's going to bring. But man, it almost brings a beauty to it because you don't know. You know? And I think that that's something that it needs to be seen for that. Where, like, uncertainty's scary. Uncertainty is not fun. Like, I don't like waking up in the middle of the night uncertain that my kids are okay.
Yeah.
It just plagues my mind.
Yep.
But it's something that I need to appreciate at the same time. I love my kids, right? I love that. Like, I have somebody to wake up and think those thoughts about.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, we need to learn to see that, like, uncertainty has a place. And instead of trying to reject it and put our heads in the sand, it's a sense of, like, no, like, look at the world for what it is.
Yeah.
It's a broke-ass world with a lot of freaking problems.
Yeah.
We live in the country with problems that are just abounding left and right, right? And we're uncertain, man. You know, it's okay. But, like, it helps you take one day at a time and, like, be present in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it, you know?
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is just hearing you say that thing about well, first and foremost, I'm really sorry to hear that, you know, about your friend. And I'll ask you after we do this, what's going on. But just hearing about those scenarios, it makes me feel, and it's why I'm always so hesitant to talk about cancer in my story, because I feel like such a little bitch, because I've had such a luxurious path with it, because it can be so horrific in people's lives. And just because of the statistical ridiculous how few people have my kind of it, or like there's only one doctor who even knows what to do with it with my type in America, and like all these things, like it sounds so terrifying, but like ultimately, like I haven't had to have horrific treatments done that have debilitated me for months. I haven't had, like, the fact that there's, like, when I go to do stuff every year, I've gone back and go to see my doctor, blah, 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 whatever. But it's at MD Anderson in Houston, and there's like itty bitty little kids everywhere, and everyone's dying. And you want to talk about the anxiety and crippling aspect of uncertainty. Yeah. And there's something really important, though, that, you know, we need to really solidify and hit home, is being those parents, your friends right now with their little guy, being uncertain about what's going to happen tomorrow or the future with his, the chaos they're experiencing up there. And I say this very lightly and very gently, but it creates the fucking awareness that right now, this moment is all we have. Mm-hmm. And this little guy, they're up there right now, I can't imagine what they're feeling. Yeah. is fighting for his life, which creates the need for me to be okay with the uncertainty to the degree that it allows me to actually cherish this moment. Mm-hmm. Because if the uncertainty cripples you, if those parents or other parents with children that have had their little ones pass because of the cancer, they'll forever live with the regret of, I wish I had the capacity to be there and just love on them as they were fading. Yeah. Instead of feeling the weight of, I was too pissed in the hallway with God, or the idea of God, or the nurses or the doctors that weren't fixing my kid. Mm-hmm. And I was just marching up and down the hallways for weeks or months while my kid was dying. Yeah. I didn't realize that I couldn't fix it, and I needed to just be there and play fucking tic-tac-toe with him. Yeah. Those are the memories you can create if you accept the uncertainty. So I think that's a really fucking important. This is something I think about every day. I think about every day about how cancer saved my life, because it allows me to actually look at my daughter when I go home, and I change careers for her to be home. Sure. And I can just sit with her and watch her little faces she makes and all of her mannerisms, and play these ridiculous games, and just feel so so inexplainably like peaceful.
Yeah. But I think the beautiful part of it, man, is like, you take something that it just kind of goes back to what I was talking about, that we would judge as being horrible. Yeah. And it flips it, because then you say, well, why is it horrible if it helped you get to this state? Yeah. Like, it was the vehicle for you to get there. 100%. And it's a sense now of like, who knows, you would have been mindless drone as a parent.
I guarantee it.
You know?
I'd be a selfish, egotistical. Well, I would pretend that I wasn't, but underneath I would have a subconscious ego driving everything, being a chef and conquering the world and whatever. Like, who gives a fuck? Yeah. Cooking food for the top 1% of America who doesn't give a fuck about me, but they care about the creativity I can have with these ingredients that they don't give a fuck about. Yeah. You know? Which
I think is so important, because it just goes back to that idea of like, we aren't a very good judge, man. We don't know what's good or bad or not. We don't, like, we have to like surrender that shit, because sometimes like when that dude cuts you off on the freeway, maybe he just saved your life and you have no idea. Yep. It's the point of just surrendering this idea where it looks so clear to me, but there's a part of me that needs to be like, okay, but I don't really know for sure, man. You know? Yep. Like, you do the best you can constantly with trying to interpret things and do it, but it just gets to the point where like, you have to tap out and be like, okay, like, I just have to admit, like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen when I die. I don't know the person I'm going to be tomorrow. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. And instead of running and hiding and letting fear just control you, it's like staring at it and just being like, you know what? I see it. It scares me that these things could happen. Yeah. But I don't know. And who knows, man? There's some great shit that happened. Like, we went to Hawaii, and like, on Brittany's birthday, we were going to go on this catamaran ride. Mm-hmm. I know this sounds really privileged to say, no. But we did. And like, it was one of those things where like, it was shaping up to just be a horrible night, you know, family's tense, all these different things. And I'm looking at it, seeing the winds pick up, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is going to be horrible. Yeah. You know, my brother and sister-in-law are going to get seasick. You know, my dad's going to be upset because he wanted to go in the morning, like all these different things. Right. And then you go and you get on the boat, and it's in this channel we were at in Maui. There's this north wind that rolls through, and it doesn't come by very often. But what we learned is that was the best thing that could have happened, because the north wind you're in the boat, it's not that rough. But what it makes it do is it makes the whales jump like crazy. So all of a sudden, we're on this boat and we're seeing whale after whale just breaching and just doing all this stuff, right? Like everything you want to see when you go on a whale watching thing in front of us, right?
So
where
crazy.
everybody in our family was just like, to the point where like we were looking at it thinking this is going to be a waste of time. And it was just such a great reminder of just being like, dude, you don't know. Mm-hmm. So you would have changed something that would have like the best catamaran ride ever.
Yeah.
And like, because of my crappy judgment. And I just think it's a humbling thing when you can at least look at your life and just realize, man, I am not a very good judge. I have made good judgments, but like I can't let that get in my head of like, I know.
Yeah.
Because there's a part of it where you have to have that space to realize you really don't. You're making your best guess.
Yeah.
And it's that part that gets in you where you think you do know. You think you know what's best for you. You think you know what's true or not true. And it's life humbles you constantly. You can talk about it with your cancer. I mean, good Lord, talk about a shot to the back of the knees, right? It was a huge dose of humility where all of a sudden you just had to realize, man, like look at what it freed you from. And I think that's the important truth here, is that like we can look and like life could be so easy and all these different things, and we can think we're such hot shit, but in reality, we're just doing the best we can. It's all circumstantial. I mean, good Lord, by now when you could sit here right now and like talk about cancer as being a good thing for you,
Best thing ever happened to me.
Yeah,
Hands down.
it's crazy, dude.
Yeah. Well, I think you need to look at what you're building up to. Is that you, not to oversimplify everything, but it's like you have to look at all the math of life and the equations of what does this thought equate to in my life? What is the result of these things being put together that I continue to put together? What are the equations in my life equating to the life that I want? And I think when you plug in uncertainty and acceptance, you have fucking peace. Mm-hmm. And when you plug in the need for certainty plus all the little fucking things you do every day to try to create the life that you think is going to be better eventually, you're building a future happiness that you're never going to live, because you're living right now in the building process of existing in a place that will never exist because it's always ahead of you. So you're killing your one chance you get. I mean, I don't fucking know about reincarnation and shit. I don't, whatever. If I come back, I want to come back as like a golden retriever, just get a fucking pet all day, and maybe with 3 legs, because I'll get even that much more sympathy, or maybe just one, just fucking pogo around, golden retriever. Anyways, uncertainty, but no, seriously. I think what people are unable to have the courage to press into the beauty of uncertainty. It's so easy to sit here and talk about it from a place of I had to think about it from a mortality standpoint and thinking about death. Like, you have to think about this shit when you're thinking about my expiration date's coming up. The gift you can give yourself today, saying my expiration date is inevitable. It is going to come. And I need to think about today are the things I'm adding to the moments that I'm living right now. The ones that are only going to be real and forever be real is right fucking now. Are the things that I'm doing creating a capacity for me to be present with my senses and really decipher whether or not these things are pure and good and beneficial to me? And how do I add more of those things to the moments that I'm living and let go of the need to continue to create a future that will never happen? So I think the equation of uncertainty feels so chaotic because you have to let go of control. You have to let go. But what it allows is a complete blank canvas for anything to come, for anything. And there's good and bad moments that are going to both extremes will happen in your life. But the beauty of accepting the bad things and stop trying to create a control of preventing the bad things from happening. The reason why I can say cancer is the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to look at like the bad is what gives me context for the good. And if I was constantly running away from the bad things, I wouldn't feel the beauty of the good. Yeah. I get to have moments with my daughter that are indescribable when there's so many people that are so committed. Like I went to a birthday party for my daughter, and I was talking to some of the parents, and the lives that they're living are preventing them from being with their children. And there's this exhausted state, you know what I mean? And they're still so thoroughly trying to define their identity and their power in this. They're certain that if they can commit to this job long enough, and the benefits that they're going to get from it are going to create happiness for their family someday. But the reality is unless you're facilitating a life that can certainly actually just be present with your family and your kids, it's never going to make sense. So it's that letting go of needing to be in control of everything to the extent of trying to create a future reality that'll never be real. But it's accepting that the only thing that fucking matters is right now in this moment. Am I living a life that's facilitating moments with my kids that are meaningful?
Sure.
Or am I letting the things that don't fucking matter, like my job and my career and all these other things that I let define me, am I anchored in those things while I'm with my kids and I'm not even present with them? Because I guarantee you will certainly be regretful of that.
Yeah.
So it's just math.
Yeah.
You know?
When you can't even be present. So talking about this the way we have, what do you think, like, so cancer was it for you, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk to somebody whose life has been pretty clean, not any diseases or hardships,
Non-provoking,
stuff like that.
yeah.
So how do you get to the point like you're talking about? What's step A look like?
What would you say?
You want me to answer?
What would you say?
I think step A, and I still want to hear what you have to say too.
Oh,
I'll give
absolutely.
you mine. My step A is, what do I have to do to get to the I don't know phase of where I really believe it? Like, what do I have to do to get to the
Accepting
place?
unacceptance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of like, how do I accept it? Where, for me, it was my faith where I was sitting in a classroom and then I asked myself, in a way that I really hadn't before, where it was like, I asked myself, like, how do I really know this is true? And then like the first things that come up are the surface things, right? You're just like, well, because you've seen it help people in this way. You've seen it do all these different things, right? So like what it did was, it's like it showed all my standards, right? So like my truth compass, and it just showed how it was a really weak compass.
Yeah.
To the point where I was just like, ooh, looking at it in what I felt was like the first time of being honest, realizing that like, man, my standards for truth are kind of scary, because if I was born somewhere else, I'd probably just believe whatever I was planted into. Looking at it detached, kind of looking at my standards, it seemed very similar to probably what a lot of people are doing. And then the question becomes, well, how would you find out if it's true? I mean, how, well, what journey do you have to go on to find what's true? Because when you realize that your standards are weak, then you have to go back and go, oh, so what are the standards? Like, how do I find truth? And I think step A is getting to that place where you realize, I really don't know. And it's a terrifying place to be at.
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
No, it's a great question, and I think it's the most important one in the conversation of uncertainty, because in terms of establishing it within yourself, like your relationship with it. I think it always starts with truth in the sense of recognizing your life decisions are not facilitating the life that is abundantly what you want. And there's a fork in the road moment that the cancer facilitated for me, is realizing like I know I don't know. So I'm honest enough to know from my life experiences that and still to this day, there's very few people that are even in a headspace to explore the freedom that it coincides with embracing uncertainty.
Yeah.
Like that's the reality of it. So I know it is it's always going to sound like a foreign language of pressing into the unknown and trying to control your energy of not controlling anything anymore. Like it is a very like physiologically like bipolar combative state of mind. Like nothing in us says let go. Nothing in us says it's okay to be uncertain. In fact, you need to be uncertain in order to actually be at peace in life. Like it's so hard. So I'm just trying to establish compassion for like, this is not an easy thing.
No.
This is not a 1, 2, 3 step scenario. It's very much an individualistic, subjective path everyone has to take. But I think it always starts with, not to get off on a Simon Sinek, tangent, but it has to start with, why is your life producing chaos when you felt like you were so certain that the things you were doing were going to create the exact equation of what it is you were trying to create. And as soon as you were abruptly met with the reality that life is out of your control, and you need to let go of that, you need to ask yourself, why do I need it to be in control? Why do I need to be in control of it? And if I'm not in control, who or what is? And that's when you said, coming back to the place of almost in a schizophrenic way, stepping outside of your body and looking at yourself and being compassionate and saying, why are you so afraid to let go? And I think for me, that was a big part of my beginning season, is getting out of the weeds of the chaos of the need to control and starting to plant seeds in a new garden of the unknown, and saying, well, I know that I don't know so many things, and I know I want to become a father and a man and a friend that can be a facilitator of what is true in life. So then for me, I start seeking sources of females and males who have died and have gone before us and have lived life and have meat and potatoes to offer us. So it's recognizing, like, I don't have it within me. I know there are answers out there, and everyone is going to be drawn to different sources of truth. So it's almost pointless for me to say, well, here's my book list. Here's my 20 books that are going to change your life.
Sure.
Because guess what? Those books might be super fucking boring to you. I just happen to be in a place where it really nurtured those specific topics, nurtured my path. But I will say, not to contradict what I just said, but the one book that really, really fucking woke me up is Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And he goes into, you want to talk about uncertainty. You're talking about a guy going into a concentration camp and having the capacity to explore human nature and why people are dying in concentration camps and why people are surviving. And his diagnosis was, no one can rob us of the choice that we have to choose to perceive things how we want to perceive them. And what he concluded is that you can certainly be defeated, and as soon as you give up, you're going to fucking die. Or you can choose to hold on to some fragment of hope, which will continue to press into the uncertainty. If you're in the concentration camp, you have no business holding on to hope. Yet some people did, and they survived it.
Yeah.
So in order to survive the chaos and the concentration camp in our minds that we're killing ourselves each day, it's everything everything that's chaotic in our mind is self-inflicted. It's a self-induced chaos that we live with every day. And he diagnosed that if you choose to press in and start dialoguing with yourself why it's so chaotic, there's answers there that will provide a different path of thinking. So it all comes down to radical, painful fucking ownership of your life is the exact fucking thing you decided to create it to be. But there needs to be an infinite amount of patience and compassion in the process to change, because like for me, I mean, I'm fucking 32 and there's patterns that feel irreversible with how I do what I do, but I'm never going to give up. I'm always going to keep trying, and I think it's dually pressing into growth, finding legitimate fucking sources of truth, and being really patient with yourself as you press into the terrifying uncertainty. So there's a duality there. It's being certain that you can't be certain, but still fucking trying to find meaning in the moments that are right now.
Sure. Well, I think too, to tap into something you were talking about earlier, is there has to be this driver, right? To even go into this realm of Mordor, like I talked about. And I think the driver is that you could believe in something that's not true or real, and you've put yourself in a situation where you're unable to see reality. And I think for me, like the part that I go back to is like I watched that HBO documentary on Scientology,
Yep.
and to me that it was amazing because like you just see the power of belief in front of
Yeah.
your hands, and it's amazing because you look at what that I don't know, you call it religion or whatever you want to call it, is it's like built on the backbone of psychology where it can really help you.
Yep.
And for some people, they found out what was at the core tenets of it after they got to their certain level, and they were like, "What? I'm out. Can't believe this no more." But there's other people that were like, "Oh, I never knew this," right? And to me, that's the scary part of what we're talking about. The scary part of what I'm talking about is like knowing that it is a possibility for you to believe in something that is made by a crazy person
Yep.
who was writing that stuff, trying to work through his own stuff, making his own religion, right? And to the point where like you could believe that wholeheartedly, like that's possible for you to do. I know when you think about it, you're probably like, I would never believe that, right? But the point being is it's a possibility. People do it all the time.
Yep.
And the big focus is like I don't want to be caught up in something like that. Like I want to find truth in its purest form and how to find it and be bold enough to do it. And I think part of what gets you on that journey is realizing that there are pitfalls like that
Yeah.
that will hold you back and will hold you captive and will keep you believing in a lie that will rob you, right? And like it doesn't matter if it's Scientology or if it's just believing that one day I'm gonna have a ton of money
Yeah.
and you can't even enjoy the day because you're so focused on what you have to do to make more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? And that's where this is the key. This is the key to unlocking that. The key to unlocking it is learning how to accept it, because if you don't, you will live a shallow, empty life, and nobody really wants that.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you're saying, and I believe the fundamental thing I left outside of the acceptance and patience with yourself, with choosing to have the perspective you want on realizing you have to accept it, accept the unknown. It takes a lot of fucking courage and stamina to grow in the space of uncertainty, because it's a very lonely place. There's everyone around us is so anchored in synthetic certainty, and you can see, if you take the time and you can have compassion for them, but you see that scared infinite fear behind that false sense of security that they have. And the reason why I say it takes so much courage is because it is fundamentally so terrifying to let go, to know that you're going to live every moment of your life and then die, and never be able to harness the commodity of control of what's after this, if there is anything. So to see that and own it and to press into it, it takes fucking courage, man.
Dude, it's Indiana Jones at the end of the Last Crusade. You're standing at that edge, your father's dying, you know that there could be something on the other side that can heal him. Sure looks like nothing's there, but you're just taking that step, trusting in this thing that's led you this far. And that's what we're talking about. It's just like, understand that there are people telling you that it's okay. It may look like you don't want to go down this scary path or take that leap of faith, but we're saying that like it's important what's at the end of it. And I think that's the point, that we talk about this 100 different ways, but the important thing is like, we don't want to be controlled by fear. We don't want to, and an uncertainty and fear and stuff like that tends to go hand in hand, because we're scared of so many different things, because like we talked about last week with love, is you open yourself up to so much because you care, and like, because I love my kids, it makes me scared to think things could happen to them that hurt me, where I don't even want to think about those uncertain things.
Yeah.
But I can't just hide from it. There's a part of it where you accept it and you learn to be like, man, like I love this stage of like where I have these two boys that just love to like be around me, and it's like being there because you don't know what the next day holds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the part where it's just like, it's scary. It's scary on paper, but once you walk the path to the point like we're talking about, you realize how necessary it was. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter how scary it is. You just need to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the key point. You just need to do it, and like whatever it takes for you to figure out that you need to do it, you know. And that's the only way we find any sort of wholeness in our lives, where we're even in touch with what we actually need, or not just some stupid lie we believe.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here, dude.
Yeah.
You know.
I think the last thing I'll say, but it's ironically, I think the most important part from my perspective is the real heartbeat of feeling the need to feel certain. You say, well, what is it that we're needing to be so certain of? And I think for most people is we want our life, we want to be certain that our life fucking mattered. Mm-hmm. And we talk about so much about legacy and not being forgotten and doing things that I believe today that I will forever be this beacon of this thing and this fucking, rocky monument and up on the stairs. And we want to prove to ourselves on a conscious and subconscious level every day that we're in control and certain that we matter. Like, that's what we are investing in, the certainty that we fucking matter. But I guarantee you will be forgotten. I guarantee it. Like, we're at the point where we're like, Mother Teresa who? Unless you live in the city where she was born or where she had her last, like, no one even talks about her anymore. Yeah. Like, she's gone. If you're one of the fortunate few, like Martin Luther King Jr., that you have a day that we have a celebratory focus on. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's a guarantee that you can be certain no one will remember you. So that's why I'm incentivized every day to let go of that give a fuck of feeling like I am a speck of fucking nothing and one of trillions of fucking planets and galaxies. Like, the infiniteness that is life and existence is unending. And we'll never see how vast it is. And me being one of billions of human beings, like how finite I am, recognizing that, it alleviates the need to have self-importance. And it allows you to be in a place of acceptance, of just realizing how fucking rad is it that I'm breathing today. Sure. And I get to interact with the people that are in my life, and I get to observe who I am and what does that mean to them. And I have the choice every fucking day, like Frankl talks about, is you have the choice to become what you believe matters. It's important to find the source of what matters, to mirror that and to grow in that. Sure. But you got to be honest about that. What is it that you're trying to be so fucking certain about it? And I think if we're all honest, it's that we're certain we want to matter. And how do we do that? How do we navigate that? So,
dude, such a good point to end on. But I think next week we will show the flip side.
Yep.
Show the flip side to
flip the script.
What certainty looks like, why we need it, and why there is balance here. You know, because there is uncertainty, is important because it feels lost right now. Yeah. And it's like we need to wipe that sucker off and let it shine again.
Absolutely.
But we also need to show this thing that we're like just clinging to right now. So it's a matter of talking about how to even the scale. And,
absolutely.
And that's the goal with certainty and uncertainty. But do you have any artwork you want to show this week?
Yeah.
We forgot to say last week what the artwork was.
So
I love that you laugh every time you bring
it
out.
It's just so ridiculous.
It's awesome,
man. Though. It is. The astronaut has gotten naked and is clearly the thinking man, and he's contemplating the weightiness of certainty, and his thought reflection is, I am certain that certainty is certainly uncertain because it is certain I will certainly never be certain about the uncertainty I'm certain will always be uncertain. So it's a mind fuck of him reflecting, him, her, who knows who's behind the mask, him, her, it is reflecting on the need to find certainty, but recognizing that there is no certainty. And there is a state of what we'll bring around full circle next week is reflecting on, well, what is certain, how to find that balance with acceptance of both ends of the energy and spectrum. So again, and there's other subliminal messages here with the blood and the fingerprints, but to reiterate, if any of this provoked any thought in you or inspires you to grow in any way, please write to Ryan's, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, the Fed Up Podcast at Gmail. Or you can post any of our socials, whatever.
Yeah, just in some way contact us, and we will send you this original piece of art, and Ryan and I will write something on it to encourage you and tell you how much we appreciate your reflection. And we're wanting to give away the art, the original art, because we're wanting to show, like, this is what it means to be human, is to pursue truth, to create out of a space of wanting to give, not wanting to take. And in exchange for you giving us your insights from the insights we provoked, we're wanting to just give of ourselves. And like, that's forever the purity we want to harness. And that's what Ryan was saying at the beginning, is this will forever be a protected place of offering truth and never asking anything, only wanting to give. And whoever wants to be a part of that place of energy and creation is fucking welcome.
Well put, dude. So next week, uncertainty. Thanks, everybody.